Sherry, what are you doing? You know, if you need something, just ask me for it, and I'll be happy to get it for you. I just don't like people coming in here and rummaging through the galley, opening compartments.
Would you relax a little bit? What are you so uptight about?
I'm not uptight.
You have been ordering me around ever since I've gotten on this airplane.
I haven't been ordering you around. It's just that you come into this galley and you rummage through the compartments, and then I can't find anything. It's hard for me to keep organized.
Look, I'm trying to do you a favor. I need to get the purser a tray of hors d'oeuvres. And
fine. All you have to do is ask.
Linda, this is not just your galley. This galley belongs to all of us.
I didn't say it was just my galley, but it is my position. It's my responsibility to keep this service organized.
Linda, I've been flying for 14 years, and I do not need you to start telling me what to do and what not to do.
For somebody that's been flying for 14 years, you act like you've been flying for 2 weeks. Shouldn't you be out there doing wines or breads or something in the cabin?
Linda, you may think that you do a good job in this galley, but if you were a little bit more organized, maybe we would see your face out in that cabin.
I beg your pardon. I can run rings around you or anybody else in the cabin or the galley anytime.
You know, I've had just about enough of you. I am really sick of you ordering me around. You know, I'm sick of you and prima donnas like you that work this galley position, and you think that you have a monopoly on it.
I don't have a monopoly on this position. I never said I did.
Wait a minute of her.
Wait a minute. Let's try to keep our voices down. I don't know what the problem is, but let's talk about it later after the service is over. Right now, we should be working together as a team. There are passengers out here waiting for service they deserve, and they're not getting it. Sherry, there are several people who need wine. I'll carry on with the hors d'oeuvres. Linda, would you please check with me to keep my cart replenished? And could you also offer some bread, please?
Sure.
Now, please keep your voices down. And I know you're both upset. We'll discuss it later. Please don't let passengers know that you are upset when you're out in the cabin, okay?
Okay.
We'll talk about it later. Are we ready?
Okay, thanks.
Now, was it better when women were in the galley or in the cockpit? All right, hold on. Okay, so the transition, right? The transition is supposed to be from that Pan Am training video where those two women were getting very territorial over their the galley. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to fast forward. And I'm going to play you a video that's a much more recent video that presents a very different picture of a woman. And this is not an indictment of women, by the way. This is not an indictment of women. But I'm going to play you another video of a very different kind of woman on a modern day aircraft. And this is recently. Here we go.
Okay, if you don't feel safe, get off the airplane.
This is your captain speaking, but never like this.
I'll stop, and we'll fly the airplane. Don't worry, I'm going to let my co-pilot fly it. He's a man. Okay?
It's a total meltdown. The pilot boarded in her street clothes and addressed the passengers over the intercom. Passenger Pam O'Neill couldn't believe what was happening.
She said, let's take a vote. How many of you would like to take off now with me dressed as I am, or would you prefer that I take 10 minutes to get changed into my cute little uniform? Then she started talking about her divorce and political candidates. And the minute she mentioned that, a gentleman stood up and just yelled, "Whoa, enough, you're scaring me."
Another passenger, Randy Reese, got up to leave and gave a running commentary on social media. "I'm shaking right now." The captain demonstrated that she was not mentally in a safe space. She says, "Sorry, I'm going through a divorce." Uh-oh. The pilot also insulted a mixed-race couple on board.
Did I offend you? Okay, so did I purposely offend you? I did. The answer is yes.
The more she tried to convince everyone she was okay to fly, the more people got off.
Flight attendants, please disarm doors.
Anthony Roman is a retired pilot.
Everything went wrong on the flight. The captain clearly was in an emotional state and was having a breakdown. The right thing to do, you don't feel safe on an aircraft, is to take matters into your own hand and get up and leave that aircraft.
After 20 passengers insisted on getting off the United Airlines flight, the pilot quietly left the aircraft.
Okay, if you don't feel safe, get off the airplane.
The United Airlines flight from Austin to San Francisco was delayed about 2 hours until another pilot took over. As for the original pilot you saw there, the airline says she has been removed from her duties pending an investigation.
So I'm playing that for you because you had drama in the galley on the Pan Am video, and now you got drama in the cockpit on a United Airlines flight headed out of Austin. And again, this is not an indictment on women. And by the way, that the Pan Am training video, I didn't even screen it. It's like, okay, let me start the show off with something that's going to be a training video of some sort. And actually, I take that back. I think I saw about 15 seconds of it, where Sharon, sounding like Karen, storms in there and is very impatient. She's just rummaging around those cupboards. And as a result of that, there's a lack of organization. And of course, if the other gal was a little more organized, maybe she'd be out there handling business and getting the cheese tray out. When was the last time you had a fucking cheese tray on an aircraft? I mean, maybe if you are a first class person, hold on, or business, but coach, you'll get some sort of, if you're lucky, some sort of processed bread product, whether it's a pretzel or a cracker or a cookie or something like that. Drama in the galley, and the way to handle it, if you're an employee of Pan Am and you're part of the service crew, the in-flight service crew, is you wait until the plane lands so that you can hash out your differences and figure out a system that's going to be better, more harmonious, and efficient for everybody involved. I love it when that woman comes in and she's the voice of reason. Well, let's just focus on the flight and make sure that everybody gets what they need, and let's put our passengers first. The voice of reason. Fast forward, you got a nut job. That woman was a nut job, and I've never seen anything like that before on a plane. And I guarantee you that a lot of other people haven't seen anything like that before on a plane as well. Like, it doesn't happen every day. And clearly she's having some kind of a breakdown. Things in her life are no longer working. And her job and her consistency are on the front lines. Wow. Now, again, not all women are going to be like this. Not all women are going to be emotional, and then attempt to. I mean, really, what was she doing? She was like hijacking that plane. She was hijacking the plane. She wasn't hijacking the plane in the sense that these people back in the 70s would hijack a plane and say, okay, you're going to take me to Cuba, or you're going to take me to Libya. That happened. No, she was hijacking the attention of the people. She was hijacking their emotions. So she was hijacking that plane, metaphorically speaking. And I guess she had the presence of mind to leave the plane. You know, there's a term that's being popularized now. It's called crash out. That woman was having a crash out. she was having a crash out. And while it was bizarre and uncomfortable for the passengers, maybe that was the best thing for her, right? Maybe now she can not deal with the pressure of flying a plane while she's going through the pressure of having a divorce or whatever else is going on in her life. Are there other ways to handle it? Maybe. But that woman was crashing out. And so it kind of brings up a lot, right? We talked about this yesterday with the crash up in Canada, if I'm not mistaken, and the woman who had was landing the plane hadn't really landed any planes, but she had been a beauty queen. And you know, my thesis around that was that the pilot wanted to be. I think the pilot wanted to be intimate with her. Right? It's like, oh, come on, you know, you can land it. You know, I have faith in you. I'll walk you through it. I feel like that was kind of part of the backstory that we're not really understanding. Here is a wet behind the ears pilot, former Miss something, like, I don't know, Miss Iowa or Idaho or whatever, right? Like she was a beauty pageant queen. Now she's going to become a pilot with not a lot of training. So, you know, I ask what I think are uncomfortable questions about this whole process. Let's say, for instance, she wasn't as attractive as she was, that she wasn't a former beauty queen. Does that pilot extend the same, quote unquote, courtesy and opportunity to learn for her? Maybe he's just one of those guys. Maybe he's a natural teacher. And that's what he does. But then again, maybe not. Maybe he doesn't say, hey, why don't you take a crack at landing this? I'll step you through it. Gee, really? You think so? Yeah, no problem. You've got this. I got your back. Maybe he doesn't do that. What if the other pilot is a man? And the other pilot has the same limited amount of experience as the beauty queen? Does the other pilot do the same thing? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's just the way the guy is wired. But these are questions that I would ask. You know, Jason Whitlock, some of you are familiar with him. He's talked about, this is kind of his new crusade. By the way, we're only going to go for an hour today because Jasper's not feeling well, and I have to get him to a vet. So in fact, I wasn't even going to do a show today. That was in the back of my mind. It's like, okay, what am I going to do a show about? I almost canceled, and then I said, okay, let me do this thing, kind of a follow-up from yesterday with some new information. And Jasper had been, you know, having a hard time yesterday. He threw up a couple times. And just before I started the show, I was like, where is he? I haven't seen him, and I found him hanging out in the closet, which is never a good sign. And I was like, oh, I got to take him to the vet. Well, the show has already started. It's already programmed. So we're gonna go for an hour. And I feel like this is the topic that is one we can wrap our arms around a little bit. Okay, so going back to this whole thing, this crash, like let's talk about Jason Whitlock. That's where I was. So Jason Whitlock has been on this crusade about women in sports, not playing sports, but in the role of commentating on sports and being in what is generally considered a men's domain. And he got into a bit of a controversy around Joy Taylor, who is the sister of a former All-Pro football player, Jason Taylor. And Joy works at Fox Sports. And Joy was named in a lawsuit by the makeup artist at Fox. And the makeup artist in her lawsuit contended that a number of people, men at Fox, kind of a Me Too thing, approached her for sexual favors, right? That they wanted more than just a professional relationship with her. And one of the things that she mentioned was she talked to Joy, because she was also Joy's stylist. And Joy said, basically, girl, get over it. Just get over it. And then she admitted, I do it. I'm playing the game so I can turn the tables on the game on them. So it comes out that Joy Taylor, in this whole sort of gnarled web of sexual politics inside of the office space or the media space, it comes up that she's having sex with one of the producers, one of the executive producers at Fox News or Fox Sports. But then she's also having sex with this guy named Emmanuel Acho, who is an ex-football player and who is one of the members of a show called Speak for Yourself, which was Jason's old show. And so Joy is also at that time engaged to a former NBA player. So Joy is spreading her joy. And Jason's point around all of this is that once you let women kind of in the quote unquote sports space, that the dialogue changes, that they're not talking about things that men would normally talk about. Now they have to kind of run everything through a filter or through a censor, and primarily because a lot of these women that are on these sports talk shows are kind of, in the DEI bucket. And specifically in some shows, you cannot find, it's very difficult to find a sports show where there are multiple people on the show giving their takes on something without a woman. It's very, very hard to find that. And there are instances, and I've seen this, and this is particularly with Molly Querim at ESPN, some dudes will get into it and they'll start kind of beefing. And it's like, oh, well, that's interesting. These guys are disagreeing. Let's see where the disagreement takes them. And then Molly Querim will step in and she'll kind of referee and move the conversation back into, for lack of a better term, friendlier terms, or terms that are, not as loaded with testosterone, right? Like that's testosterone being worked out. And usually what happens with guys is that they'll beef, and then they're done, and then they move on, right? Dudes are like dogs in dog parks. They will, if they'll sniff your butt, if the two dogs sniff each other's butt and they don't like each other, they'll beef. And then it's over. In most cases, not all, but in most cases, once it's over, it's over. Next thing you know, they're all chasing balls around and shit, right? Like that, dogs kind of handle it. Men are kind of like that too. Like men will beef, and then it's over, and then they're chasing balls. But women have been brought into these talk show situations as kind of a governor, so that the conversations stay within the lane. Like that's what they're, in most cases, that is what they're there for. And then it's, in the back of their minds, they're like, oh, I have to be respectful of this woman. We have to bring it back. We have, we're getting too testosterone out. So this is just a thing that's happening in the sports media space, and it again, what I'm trying to convey here is that the women in the space are controlling whatever kind of emotion the men are experiencing in that space. Sometimes the women, and I've seen it with men too, so it's not like it's just one or the other, but like I watched Randy Moss cry, but sometimes the women can be the emotional driver in these sports talk spaces. So the key here is emotion. This is kind of what I'm getting at. And if you're a pilot, that's the last thing that you want to have is emotion. Now, Jason, getting back to Jason and this connection with like the beauty pageant queen as the pilot, he didn't want Joy Taylor on his show because he felt like ultimately he would not be able to trust himself. And he would do something to jeopardize like his position standard. And then at that point, Joy Taylor, whomever, would have like the upper hand on him. And she could control his career. She could ruin him by distorting whatever kind of affiliation they had, right? So he was and they wanted her to pair, they wanted to pair Joy Taylor with Jason, and he wouldn't do it because somewhere inside of Jason knew that he would probably say and do something very stupid because he has a history and a track record of it. So his thing was, I don't want any woman that I am attracted to as part of the media that I am creating content around. And ultimately, I understand this. I know where Jason is coming from. And there are women he respects, and there are things that he might do with a particular female co-host, right? But I'd say by and large, he wants to steer clear from that. And when you get into a situation like this most recent flight that flipped over, you cannot talk about that situation without bringing up that this woman was a beauty queen and she was attractive. And the man who is the pilot may not have used his best judgment because, maybe he's, again, just a really great teacher, right? Like it's a teaching moment. But then again, he might be being swayed by her beauty and her looks. And he's like, don't worry about it. I got you here. And I'm not saying that women can't be pilots or they, if you're a really good pilot, you happen to be attractive. Well, like that's just the way it is. But that's a bad combination where you have someone who's inexperienced and attractive and this kind of natural thing that happens between men and women. And I would say a lot of people want to blame the woman for flipping the plane over. But I would also blame the pilot for, my sense is that he had an agenda. I would blame the pilot. And lastly, I would blame the airline because the airline, in this case, is they're wrong. They're wrong for hiring somebody and putting them in a position where something like this could happen. Not a lot of flight hours, kind of learning on the job. So there's a thing, right? There's this thing with Pluto and Aquarius happening now, which I talked a little bit about yesterday at the end of the show. And Aquarius is supposed to be equal. Like everything's equal. We're all equal. We all have our unique traits and unique weaknesses, and that's what makes us strong. Aquarius is the sign of synergy. And when you look at, and again, I talked about this yesterday, for some of you might have missed it, the DEI programs are all what I would call fake or synthetic Aquarius, because they're mandated. It's like, okay, well, we have to have, you know, these minority groups, whatever these minority groups are. They don't always have to be racial groups, by the way. They could be disabled groups. They could be gender-based, whatever, right? Whatever qualifies as a minority as opposed to the majority. This whole DEI wave, right, was instituted. And so therefore the hiring practices reflected that. And it's, again, it's very kind of Aquarian in a lot of ways. You know, like if you look at, you know, the what was the original symbol for the LGBTQ community, it was a rainbow. And if I'm not mistaken, right, that's an Aquarian symbol. Why is it an Aquarian symbol? Because it is one band of light, but within that band of light, there are spectrums of light. So you have this projection of light as a whole, which is the group. And then inside of that light, you have the bandwidth of the light, which would be the individual parts of the light itself. And that would be the individual. So the rainbow is very Aquarian, just in terms of its application. So there's been a rush to fill these positions with people that fit a certain requirement. Now, the problem, and this is what I talked about yesterday as well, is this leads to something much, much bigger, which we're going to get into. The problem started during COVID. And you had a bunch of legacy workers, right? People who were anywhere between, let's say, their mid 50s to their late 60s, 67, 68, right around there, right? Maybe like 58, 59, like about a 10-year bandwidth. Now, those people, particularly the ones from basically like, I don't know, 60 on, or let's say 50, 56 to 65, that 10-year gap. Those people are born under Pluto and Virgo. And this is like a little subgeneration that doesn't get talked about enough. And the Pluto and Virgo generation are the ones that build out the computer systems. Like they're the ones that are kind of on the front lines of whether it's Tandy, or whether it's, you know, Tandy being Radio Shack or whatever. They're the ones that are there. They're the ones that are, like when I was 18 years old. So that was 18, 19 years old. So that was like 1978, 79. These computer languages are just starting to come in, right? So you have like Fortran and COBOL, which for a long time were, you know, sort of the kind of the first wave of computer languages. And we're starting to move away from the punch cards, right? Things are starting to move into the digital world. I remember in media, I think it was my second year in the media program at my college, digital editing was introduced. And it was like, are you kidding me? All you got to do is find the digital number where you want to make this edit. I mean, it cut editing time for video in half. Like it was this major advancement. So there's this technological thing going on. And again, it's people that are kind of around my age that are starting to take this in. And of course, with COBOL and Fortran being those initial languages, there are more languages to come. But the systems that are going to be built, the ones that are moving us out of the punch card and the magnetic tape computer world that we've been in, they're now starting to come online. So the technology is starting to get upgraded and it's starting to be implemented in all of these different areas of our experience, whether it's air travel or whether it's dealing with public utilities. It's starting to make its way into banking. I remember I was around 20 years old, and it was the first time I used an ATM machine. Like, that's all happening at this period of time. And so you get a wave of baby boomers, and you get this Pluto and Virgo generation. And they're the ones, right? They're the workforce that is transforming how we're living and moving it and pushing it forward towards a more technological interface with life. Okay, so this group is the group that creates the legacy systems. And in 2020, when we have COVID, of course, what's the determinant factor? The determinant factor is going to be, are you going to take a shot, and are you going to wear a mask? And so the people, I was 60 at the time in 2020. So if you were born in, say, 1957, you'd be 63, 58, 64. You're hitting that kind of retirement age. 57 is when Pluto first goes into Virgo. So a lot of these people now are looking around and they're asking themselves, do I want to be a part of this? And by the way, there were younger people too during that time, late 50s. Same deal. Do I want to be a part of this? Do I want to take that shot and that shot and that shot and whatever else they require from me from this point forward? And oh, by the way, I got to show up with a face mask too. And a lot of people who built these systems said, no, I'm fine. I'll take my retirement. I'll take my early retirement. I don't want to have to deal with this. Right? So this is a really important thing, because while you have like this whole, kind of catechism of DEI coming in, you also have these people, and there's women in here too. I'm not going to say it's just men, because women can be developers or engineers or whatever, but they're part of the legacy systems group and they're leaving. Right. And so you have this new wave coming in with not a lot of like experience. And even the experience that they may have had in the training that they might have had may not match some of these legacy systems that a lot of these, services and platforms are built on. Like, one of the things that's come out with the helicopter and plane crash at the just off the boundary of the Reagan Airport is that the FAA is using old and outdated systems. Those are the legacy systems I'm talking about. And who made a big stink out of this? Elon Musk did. So there's a real gap here between the people who built the systems and maintained the systems and the people who are now being brought in to operate and manage those systems. It's a huge gap. And now there are still some people that are around that may have said yes, or they may have finagled their way to be able to stay on board without having to do something that their body and their conscience was not in agreement. So some of these people are still here, but they're not as many as you think. And they're now tasked with training these people to get up to speed on these systems. And again, this is something I talked about yesterday, but I'm going to take it a step further today. If you go into a job and you're new, right? You're new. And let's say you've had some reasonable training for the position that you're going to be a part of. There's a learning curve. And the learning curve is basically twofold, right? There's going to be a learning curve that has to deal with human systems, meaning that you're going to need to know who you're working with. You're going to need to know what the chain of command is. You're going to need to know kind of what makes these people tick. Because if you've been in a corporate environment, there are people who are difficult. And if you want to get shit done, it's not like you have to kiss their ass, although sometimes you kind of have to kiss their ass, especially back in the early days in Silicon Valley. Like it was sort of Revenge of the Nerds. But you needed to know who they were, right? You needed to know what they liked. You know, like for instance, there were guys at this company that I worked for, and these were the engineers. If you wanted to get shit done, you needed to be able to communicate with them, and you need to be able to, work with them. So it's like, well, okay, what are you into? Oh, you're into jam bands. Oh, okay, right. So next thing you know, like you go over, you start a discussion. Hey, man, heard Fish is coming to town. You gonna go see him? And that's how it starts. And then that person who is supposed to carry out some form of technical task for you, which you cannot do, might be actually more amenable to doing it. And that was my experience. So you got to learn the human systems. And there's not a one size fits all when it comes to that. Some people are really easy and they're team players and they say, yeah, hey, no problem. And, if you have any issues, just reach out to me. Other people will see you as competition. Other people, want you to recognize their expertise before they'll do anything for you, right? That's part of the learning curve when you get into a place. The other part of the learning curve is the systems. And you have to learn the systems. Now, you may have some experience with the technological systems, but it can't be any greater than 10%, right? Like you could have a wider gap on the human system side, maybe 25%, 30%. But if you're somebody who kind of understands how to navigate through that world, you can shrink that pretty quickly. But you have to be able to ask questions and figure out who people are and, grease the wheels, make more allies than enemies. That's always worked for me in that world, right? I think you get more done with Libra than Aries in that environment. Now, if you're in management, you may get more done with Aries, but that's a different story. But on the tech side, you can't have more than a 10% gap. You can't have more than a 10% knowledge gap. So if you're brought onto some place or something, and you got a 10% learning curve at the knowledge gap, and somebody works with you, there's a reasonable chance you can figure it out, 3 weeks, a month, 6 weeks at the most. And then you're kind of up to speed and they don't have to worry about you, and you won't cost them a lot of money and time. But if you go in there with a 40% knowledge gap, and that person who's assigned to you not only has their job and what they're supposed to do, but they're also supposed to train you while you're on the job to understand those systems, that's a problem. And this is what happened during and post-COVID. We're seeing everything now downstream from COVID. And the hiring policies, the emptying out of the people who built these legacy systems, some of whom are still around, but they're completely strained. So the guy that is there to train whomever, maybe it's like 3 whomevers or whatever, probably has his own job that he's doing. He's not there specifically to just train people. He's got his own thing that he has to do as well, and that creates a lot of stress on a lot. So this is what's happening. This is really the algebra for what's taking place, and of course Aquarius is bringing up this thing, right? This we're just going to make it equitable for everybody, not equal but equitable, and so we're gonna bring these people in now, right? We're gonna bring them in now, and we're gonna show how progressive we are. and BlackRock's going to reward us, and the government will reward us. We're doing our part. We're doing our part to really sink our teeth into diversity, equity, inclusion. Now, that may be okay if you have some of these other people that were still around, but they're not. So this is what we're getting, and this is the dark side of Pluto and Aquarius. But by the way, it's not just airlines; it's any systems. So if you see the power go out, or there's something just incredibly wonky that happens, now there's a very good chance that this dynamic that I'm talking about is part of the issue. It may not be all of the issue, but it's part of the issue. Now, here's the other side of this, which is, I think where ultimate it's all going, is that in order to maintain some kind of technological standard so that these things don't fall apart, that there has to be a complete reset of the native technology. There has to be a one-size-fits-all technological solution. And that means the eradication of all of these legacy systems that are still in place. The ones that are metering your water, not on the side of your house with a smart meter, but literally at the, whether it's the desalination plant or the water waste treatment plant or whatever that is, those are legacy systems. The power grid, walk around, those are legacy systems. Like a lot of these transformers and, all the things that are associated, they've been there for years, right? Years. And the systems that control them, well, I'm sure they've made upgrades along the way, they're still legacy systems. So at some point, what's going to happen is that these legacy systems are going to run out of legacy system operators. It's already taking place. And when you hear Elon Musk say, well, that the FAA needs upgraded and updated systems and equipment, basically what he's saying is that needs to happen across the board. That needs to happen in airplanes, jets, power, the power grid, municipalities, right? There's got to come a time when they're going to have to completely redo everything. And it's because in some cases there's been gradual upgrades and replacement, but that's not true across the board. And when you lose the workforce that knows what to do and hold it all together, you don't replace the workforce, you replace the system. And that's where all this is going. Ultimately, it's where it's all going to go. And I would assume that within the next 4 years, because everything is happening so quickly, that this is going to be the major announcement. Like they talk about the golden age. Oh, we're in the golden age now. This is the golden age. This is what's being sold to us. Well, that may or may not be true, but if they sell it with this idea that technology is going to do all these things that it previously didn't do, then people go, oh yeah, this could be the golden age, right? We could have one universal system that is running everything. And I guarantee you, there are people that are jockeying for that, whether it's Elon Musk or the Chinese or whomever, right? They're going to jockey for it. So it doesn't matter whether it's an airplane or the FAA or your municipal uni, it will all be one thing. It will be one common computer language, one common sort of hardware set, even though the hardware might look a little different in different places, but it will still be basically the same hardware. Now, even when you have a new system, the system at times will need to be upgraded because there's always like variables, derivations, all the things that we don't always account for, right? So that system will need to be upgraded from time to time. And this is where AI is going to come in. Now, I know that AI is something that not everybody agrees upon. Some people say, well, AI is just a glorified search engine. Maybe. Other people are at the way end of the spectrum, and they'll tell you AI is running the fucking world. And we just don't even know it yet. And then the AI that we have and what they give to us is a fractional kind of, manifestation of the much bigger AI, right? So you can be on either end of that spectrum. I don't really believe it, glorified search engine, to it's actually running things, right? And so the commands or protocols or the agendas are being driven by AI, and the people in the world who are supposed to be the public servants, presidents, prime ministers, whatever, right? They're all taking sort of direction from this AI, and they may not even know it's the AI. That's the other thing, right? It could be somebody who might be an advisor, and they've never met that advisor, or they've had a Zoom call or something with that advisor, and that advisor could be, fucking AI, Max Headroom. I'm throwing these things out here, but I guarantee you that when the new systems come, because they're going to have to replace the legacy systems. People just aren't going to be there to uphold them, that AI will play a role moving forward in those systems. Now, one of the things that I believe AI is doing and can do is AI is writing programs. And this has been sort of the, kind of the wild frontier, right? You have a lot of these programmers and coders who are really brilliant and can do all this shit with code, and they have their sort of human experience to bring to the table, and they believe that sort of they're the pinnacle of controlling the virtual space by their ability to create any number of things due to their understanding of code. And so when they think that AI can approach their complexity, nuance, experience, whatever, they will laugh at it. And I will tell you that AI is writing its own programs, and it will get infinitely better. Why? Because whenever you write a program, you got to debug it. You got to find all these things that are wrong with it. And I remember when we would launch something. Of course, it's gotten much faster. But when we would launch something, there would be about 15 of us that would play with the thing that was launched. And we'd do it over and over again, and we would try to find out what wasn't working. And so you'd have all these different pieces of data coming from different people. So, well, this didn't work here, this didn't work here. And so then it goes back to the engineers. They go, okay, well, the reason why this happens is because this zero is over here, this one, whatever it is, right? And then they fix it. And then they run it again until finally, hopefully, all the bugs are out and they have a program that they can launch and have a minimal amount of customer service time to deal with. That's how it works. With AI will have its own internal check and balance system that will run the program, and it will run the program with any number of variables, and it will then notate and be able to calculate where potential bugs are very quickly. Probably it'll be 90% faster than the process I just spewed out to you. Now, if you're an engineer and you write some code and you do something, you already have like a fail-safe thing, right? Like there's something you're going to run through the program through, and it will have certain parameters. It'll look for certain things. So it's like a filter. It's like a first line filter, but it won't catch everything. And that's why you have to have people using that program to figure out really what the full extent of it is, and what it does and can't do, and why it's not doing what it's supposed to do. So it's not like they don't have the technological set built into it, but it's not the only thing. AI, on the other hand, will be able to run multiple variables and then also watch it, observe it, calculate, and make the corrections on the fly. That will be a part of the new legacy systems, which means ultimately you're not going to need even the people that are going to be part of it and running them and launching them. They won't. The majority of them won't be needed because it'll all be dealt with and taken care of. And we are not that far away from it. When Uranus moves into Gemini, things are going to accelerate very, very quickly. So one of the things you're going to hear more about moving forward are these older systems and the need to replace them. Now, initially, that was all baked into the World Economic Forum. And that was all baked into this global climate initiative. And there were standards and protocols for everybody in every country. And there would be standardized equipment or whatever the fuck it was, solar, wind. There were these global standards that they were all agreeing upon. And then by agreeing upon the global standards, right, you now have a new system that is going to be implemented, and that's going to be the system moving forward. But because the United States has pulled out of a lot of this stuff, and they're not participating in it, then it throws all of that kind of up in the air, right? So why did that happen? Why did Trump decide that he was not going to honor any of the climate change stuff or the Paris Accords or the Kyoto, whatever it is? In some ways, it's a rejection for what I would call a false hypothesis. But really, my sense is that no, we're going to run those protocols. We're going to run that technology. We are the ones that are going to determine how this thing is going to unfold moving forward. That's exactly what I think is happening. And when you have somebody like Elon Musk on board, whoever Elon Musk is, he's going to be driving that, right? So this is all part of what I've been talking about as it relates to Trump. Now, one of the first things I said about this new version of Trump is that he is going to be a Caesar. He has been. For better or worse, he has become the American Caesar. And you can type that in and you'll see Trump American Caesar. Check out how many search results you'll find. You'll find a lot. So again, this is my theory. And maybe this was the way it's supposed to be all along, who knows? But what Trump is attempting to do is Trump is attempting to redefine the new world order based on the new American world order. That's what I think he's attempting to do. So by pulling out of climate change and all those agreements that, again, are very much connected to the types of technology that would be used, he's basically saying, well, maybe we should introduce our own technology, our own standards, right? Our own sort of new universal system, and that the rest of the world can copy it or follow it. I mean, they're doing the same thing with like the CBDC. So when Trump says we're not going to have a central bank digital currency, what he's saying is that we are not going to have a coin or a type of monetary exchange that all these other countries in the world have already agreed upon. They've already agreed upon it. He says, no, we're not going to agree upon that. Now, we may have our own thing, but it's not going to be that thing. Right? When they say central bank, what are they talking about? They're talking about the Fed. There's like versions of the Fed all over the fucking world. And so this is another example of what I'm talking about. Like, we will create the standard. We will create the point of the realm. And if you want to prosper, well, you're going to have to follow along. We are pulling out of these accords. We are not agreeing to the equipment and the systems that are associated with everything you've already set up, because we are going to develop the thing that's going to take us into the 21st century. I think this is what's happening on that level. And will it be universal? I don't know. But I think it's a turning of the tide. It's a flipping of the script. And I think Europe is terrified of Trump. I think Europe is terrified of Trump, because whether it's Trump or Vance, they're bringing up very, very hard-hitting points about Europe. Very hard-hitting points about Europe. So Europe is terrified. And I just wonder how close we are to a conflagration with Europe. Because one of the things that came out of, well, Trump and Vance are basically saying, hey, Europe's going to really have to do a better job of defending itself here, because we're going to pull ourselves out. And so immediately, what does Keir Starmer start talking about? Well, we'll commit troops to Ukraine. Really? In lieu of the United States providing all the weapons to Ukraine, Keir Starmer is going to, by the way, there are already British troops there, but he's going to commit more, right? That's going to become, England's war. Interesting. Does France follow suit? Does Germany follow suit? Look, a lot of these countries have such deep internal problems. Whether it's migration or whether it's the French people figuring out that, Macron's wife is not what she says he is, right? Europe has some very, very deep problems. They have deep economic problems as well. And as the pressure begins to mount internally for Europe, whether it's coming from their own populace or whether it's coming from outside of Europe, and the United States putting pressure on Europe, or whether it's the phenomena of its own version of corruption, how does Europe deal with that? Well, Europe will deal with it by going to war. That's how Europe will deal with it. And if you think about it from just an absolutely diabolical perspective, Europe, France or Germany or England or whomever, who will they conscript to go fight in a theoretical war? They're not going to conscript the people that just showed up, I guarantee you. They're going to conscript their own people. That's what they're going to do. It would be like a sacrifice. And that's what World War I and World War II were. They were massive sacrifice rituals. So would they be willing to do it again? I would think they would be. Only because the way that the EU has been set up, that they don't want that to be disbanded. They want to hold on to power. They want to hold on to the structure as it is. They don't want this virus to infect it. And that's what J.D. Vance was. He was a virus. He was a virus in Germany, and he infected those people with the sense of, holy shit, somebody's talking to us and I'm hearing what they're saying. And this is really fucked. I'm with them. Right. And it could create more, unrest, more political participation by opposition parties or whatever. Europe does not want that. Europe wants its strange little hegemony, and they will go to war to keep that from changing. They will go to war. Now, what happens if that happens? That's an interesting question. So, one of the things that's sort of creeping out a little bit here, and this is really kind of hanging on the fringe, right? I don't know if you guys have caught this story, but there's a fringe story emerging that and this is not from the Democrats. This is from a guy, a former KGB operative, who said they started courting Donald Trump in the 1980s. Now, I don't know whether it's true or not. I'm just telling you. You're going to hear more about it. I think his name is, Trump's KGB name was Korolev or something like that. And the person who is the connector to all of that is his former wife, Ivana, who's from Eastern Europe. And so supposedly Trump is, this kind of Manchurian candidate for Russia. Now, I'm not saying whether it's true or not. You're going to hear more about it. You will hear more about it. Well, let's say it is true. Let's say there is some truth to that. So if that is true, then what side is Trump going to be on? He's going to be on the Russian side. And now if Trump pulls out and the United States pulls out, and all of a sudden the rest of Europe is like, well, we have got to create a standing army, and we have to defend Ukraine with all of our might and our standing army. Do you think that it would be out of the question that the United States would, at that point in time, be on Russia's side? It may not be out of the question. These are just things to think about, right? Because the EU does not want to lose. They don't want even Brexit, which was completely botched. They don't want Brexit happening for all these countries. They don't want France to say, fuck you, EU, we're done, we're out. They don't want Germany to do that. They don't want Spain to do that. They don't want Italy, any of them. They don't want to lose their membership. They have to keep all these countries in line. And so the thing that you do is all these countries will have to have a common purpose and a common goal. And that common purpose and common goal will be ultimately to defend Europe and the European Union. I think if there is going to be a war in our time, which would be within the next 5 years, that is going to be the front. It's not going to be Taiwan. It's not going to be the Middle East. It is going to be Europe. So these are all things that are just floating around right now. Keep your eye on the Trump KGB Manchurian candidate story, because once the left gets a hold of it, oh my God, they're going to run with this thing. See, told you so. See, told you so. Told you so. He was a Putin's stooge all along. Oh, and look, so is Tulsi Gabbard. Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard's, she's a Russian. Oh, so is our. Oh, now all of a sudden we have all these Russian sympathizers in our government. That will be a narrative. Like, you're going to hear it. Now, whether it's true or not, we'll find out, won't we? I'm not sure how much I have to add. I just wanted to talk about the air stuff. I had all these air crashes that I wanted to bring up. Like there have been major air crashes, major. In 1982 alone, July 9th, there was a Pan Am flight, crashed just after takeoff in New Orleans, collided with trees and houses, killed 145 people. Almost 6 months to the day, same year, Air Florida flight plummeted into the Potomac, killing 70 passengers, 4 crew members. 1985, Delta Airlines approaching Atlanta, Dallas, Fort Worth. During a thunderstorm, struck a car, 2 water tanks, killed 134 passengers, crew members. August 16, 1987, Northwest Airlines flight crashed just after takeoff in Romulus, Michigan. Striking light poles, a rental car facility in the ground. Crash killed 148 passengers, 6 crew members. There's been a lot. And this is just the United States. In the span of just, 23 days in 1994, on September 8th, 1994, U.S. air flight crashed while attempting to land in Pittsburgh, killed 127 passengers, 5 crew members. The airplane was destroyed by the impact and fire. October 31st, again, just 23 days later. An American Eagle flight in Roselawn, Indiana, crashed, killing 64 passengers and 4 crew. By the way, the American Eagle are these jets, the small jets that have been crashing. Here's another one. May 11th, 1996, a Value jet flight crashed into the Everglades about 10 minutes after takeoff from the Miami International Airport. The crash killed all 105 passengers and 5 crew members. Just a couple months later, July 17th, a Trans World Airlines flight crashed in the Atlantic near East Mauritius, New York, on its way to Paris, France. All 23 people on board were killed. The airplane was destroyed. So there's all these incidents of planes that have crashed in the past. So it's not like this is anything new. It's been happening for a while. The difference between these crashes, because there's always going to be some degree of risk you will take with air travel. But the difference now is that there are people who have been employed in the operation. And it's not just the operation of the planes, by the way. It's also places like Boeing where the planes are being built. That's the other side of this. And you have these faulty parts on these Boeing planes, windows flying up, doors flying up, pieces of wing flying up, because Boeing's been doing the same thing. They've been hiring people that aren't qualified, on the job training, and not enough oversight. This is the difference. The difference now is that the ability for human error, real human error, to be a part of the collapse or the crash is much greater now than it was before. There's always going to be some degree of human error, right? Like there was a plane in 2006 in Lexington, Kentucky, left off the wrong runway and ran off the end. 2 crew members and 47 passengers are killed, right? So there's always going to be some degree of human error. But the problem is that you don't want to increase the propensity of human error by hiring unqualified people while the people who built the systems are no longer in place. But again, right, what does it mean? We're at this weird inflection point. And whatever it is that's going to be new isn't here. It's not on arrival. So we're gonna be dealing with this weird kind of chaos as a result of this. Anyway, that's it. I gotta go. See what's wrong with Jasper. So I'll be back on Sunday night. I'm going to be joined by my friend, Professor Dr. Longo. Professor's his brother. So Dr. Longo will be in the house with me on Sunday night. And I have no idea what we're going to talk about, but it'll always be interesting. I can tell you that right now. So we'll have Dr. Longo in the house on Sunday. And hit like, hit subscribe. Don't forget our good friends at truehempscience.com. Your code is 15MINS to get the goodie bag with $100 or more. And that's it. Thanks for being here. Take good care of yourselves. Treat each other well. God bless. Love you. And bye for now.